Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the ongoing disaster in Ohio and the disastrous response to the disaster following the train derailment in East Palestine on February 3rd. Now this is a part 2 video. If you want to know what's been going on until now, there's a part 1, I'll link it in the description. But I will be doing a quick refresh on what's been going on in this video before we get to some updates. Basically, on February 3rd, a 50-car Norfolk Southern train derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, reported as between 11 and 20 cars full of extremely hazardous toxic materials piling up, essentially creating a ticking time bomb, a dirty ticking time bomb, if you will. Now, one of the primary chemicals that was spilled was vinyl chloride. In fact, I've read that up to 1.1 million pounds was spilled. Vinyl chloride is toxic, but when it gets ignited, it becomes phosgene gas, a chemical weapon that's been banned since World War I. And that's just what they did, what you think would be the worst idea imaginable. Apparently, there was some fear that the contents in the tanker cars were under pressure, and that the explosion could wipe out the town. So the responding authorities opted to do what they called a controlled burn, which ended up causing a toxic plume and massive cloud of, you guessed it, phosgene gas. Among all the other horrific and toxic chemicals such as butyl acrylate, ethylhexyl acrylate, and ethylene glycol monobutyl ethers. But the fun doesn't stop there. These chemicals weren't ignited immediately. In fact, the tanker cars were just sitting there on the ground wrecked for 3 days after the crash, with the chemicals seeping into the soil and the nearby creeks and streams. February 5th, the residents of East Palestine were told to evacuate, and on February 6th, the cars were vented and ignited into a controlled burn. And this is where it gets a little sketchy. Just 2 days after the controlled burn started, residents of East Palestine were encouraged to come home. Crisis averted, everything's fine. The government, the EPA, all said that the water was safe to drink and the air is safe to breathe. But this was obviously not quite true, as people's livestock and their pets were starting to act strangely and even drop dead. Kids started having respiratory issues. Before long, people started noticing all the dead fish floating along the bottom of all the streams and creeks that feed directly into the Ohio River. Also, a lot of the hazardous toxic materials were just buried. That way, the train tracks could be cleared and reopened. Because if the train tracks are blocked, it's a lot harder for these corporations to make their money. And if it's not clear, the situation was handled terribly, seemingly in order to try and avoid major media coverage and try to just sweep the whole thing under the rug, or into the rivers and skies in this case. I did cover some kind of spooky coincidences and details in the last video, like a Netflix movie that came out last year and was shot in Ohio, featured some East Palestine residents as extras, and had the same exact subject matter, a train derailment ending up in a toxic spill, along with footage of the train about 20 miles before the derailment, in which you can see the axles of the train on fire. So go watch that video either now or after this one, and let's get into some updates. We have some more juicy, unsettling coincidences here. First off, a lot of people have been pointing out that the CDC recently updated the toxicological profile for vinyl chloride, just 11 days before the disaster occurred. Actually removed information about risks of cancer, contamination in drinking water, and its effects on children. That would be unsettling enough on its own, but the toxicological profile has actually been in place for 17 years with no changes. What are the odds it gets changed just before a major industrial spill happens? Coincidence? Now, after being told it's safe to return, residents are noticing strange, inexplicable skin rashes in East Palestine. If this is happening just by being exposed to the air or by taking showers, imagine what's happening inside the human bodies that are consuming the drinking water that's apparently safe to drink. The North Kentucky Water District have announced that they're shutting down their Ohio River intakes just as a precautionary measure. But here we have Ohio public officials drinking the water, so it must be safe, right?
I'll tell you, we believe in science, so we don't feel like we're being your guinea pig, but we don't mind proving to you that we believe the water's
Okay,
Here's
thank
to
you, I
Caroline.
appreciate that.
Here's to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
See, it's totally fine. But that's just the thing. The government is allowed to lie to you. For a company, it's a little bit harder. Giant Eagle, a grocery store chain, has immediately discontinued selling its water bottles that are produced by a company called Creekside Springs, a company that bottles water just about 25 miles away from East Palestine. If someone drinks the water they purchased at Giant Eagle and gets sick or dies, Giant Eagle could be held liable. So of course they're not going to sell it if they can be held liable for injury or even death. So do you think the water is safe? Here's video that came out the same day, February 15th, that the EPA claimed it found no harmful levels of contamination in the municipal water supply. But for how long? It seems as though we can see the contamination, and we can see the effects of contamination, yet somehow there is none. The effects of the acid rain or the vinyl chloride pollution can be seen all over the eastern United States and even in Canada. And what's being reported as a strong, sweet chemical odor and residue is being reported in New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maryland, and New Hampshire, with no source identified. I wonder what that could be. In addition to several train derailments with hazardous material cargo in Ohio, Michigan, and Texas, there was also a violent fire at a chemical plant in Florida. And just a couple days ago, there was seemingly another disaster. It's being called a mass casualty incident at a manufacturing plant in Bedford, Ohio, with again almost zero media coverage.
Tonight, officials in Little Rock, Arkansas are investigating the cause of a deadly plane crash. A twin-engine plane slammed into the ground today near a 3M manufacturing plant, killing all 5 people on board. They all worked for the same environmental consulting firm and were heading to the site of a deadly explosion at a metals plant earlier this week in Ohio. The cause of the crash is not yet known.
Also 2 days ago, an 18-inch pipe bomb was found on train tracks in Pennsylvania. The bomb even had burn marks on it, indicating that someone tried to trigger it, but something with the mechanism failed. In another bizarre coincidence, a QR code health pilot program based around a wearable device known as myID was set to go live just a week before the disaster occurred. All 4,700 residents of East Palestine were supposed to receive and put on one of these bracelets, which some people were saying were nothing more than a QR code on a wristband. And others are saying they can record and transmit biometric data and health records. I haven't seen verification that the program was implemented. What I've mostly read is that the program was implemented, but most residents of East Palestine just didn't put the bracelets on. A curious Reddit user dug into the program a little bit. He went onto the myID site and went to the informed consent page, which said that the user info could be shared with others, which might include academic institutions as well as nonprofit and for-profit businesses or government agencies. So basically, under the myID program, the residents of East Palestine were expected to wear these bracelets that would basically share their data with the highest bidder or even the government. The user clicked a link saying, "Find out more about our collaborators here," at which point he was taken to the Ancestry.com collaborators page. So myID is linked to Ancestry.com. Some people are really freaked out about the idea of Ancestry.com having their DNA forever and being able to do whatever they want with it. But I'm sure those people would probably not want Ancestry.com to have their biometric and medical data either. The first collaborator listed is the American Society of Human Genetics, which was exposed by the Washington Post as having roots in the eugenics movement after World War II. If you didn't know, eugenics is the study of how to arrange reproduction to increase the occurrence of desirable characteristics in the populace. Which, because of a little thing that happened in World War II, most people know eugenics is a pretty terrible idea. Then there's Calico Life Sciences, another collaborator that's a subsidiary of Alphabet, the company that owns Google. Basically, the idea behind the bracelets is supposed to be that the EMTs and doctors can have access to all of a patient's medical data just by scanning a QR code. Some people are obviously speculating that the disaster may have been done purposely, and that these bracelets were part of that plan, maybe to measure the negative effects of the disaster. But that's just a baseless conspiracy theory. In the last video, I briefly touched on the subject of people kind of connecting all of these derailments and toxic spills to the huge increase in food production factory fires we've seen over the last couple years. The theory suggesting that there's a massive planned food shortage in order to have people more easily controlled and more reliant on the government. And there's now a new clip making the rounds that have these theorists very alarmed. Here it is.
I am visiting California, and I am here with one of the local ranchers, and I was brought out to this field in Stanislaus County, California, and this is the center of like the heartland of the nut industry, the almond industry, the pecan, or not pecans, I'm sorry, almond, walnut, cattle. There's not a lot out here, folks. And yesterday we were at a gathering and we were alerted by another rancher that the railroad company, some company, that nobody knows which company this is, has brought in hundreds of these railroad cars. And you can just see the line of them here. Let me see it, make sure I'm getting it in the shot. Sorry. getting this in the shot. Now, on the cars, they say odorless liquid petroleum gas. Now, they are loaded. They're riding low on their axles. They're double and triple deep on the switchback.
So as you can see, there's a massive hundreds of tanker cars long train that seems to have been abandoned in the middle of nowhere in California farm country. That wasn't ordered by any of the farmers, and none of them have no idea why it's there. So because of what's been happening in other places, they're kind of freaked out, and I don't blame them. We also now know that the Norfolk Southern train was not classified as containing hazardous materials, which is relevant because if a train is carrying hazardous materials, the company is required to notify the residents of any nearby towns. The train carrying hazardous materials will be coming through, which obviously would cost the company more time and money. So they lied. And most of the coverage coming out about the disaster is just coming from people that live there. It seems as though all the federal organizations are treating this disaster like a hot potato. People want to know at least that their safety is being put above a corporation's profits. But I'm not here just to doom and gloom up your day. That's right, we have some exciting, hope-inspiring news. A representative from the company has apologized
to this community, and I want to make sure you understand I am terribly sorry that this happened to the community.
And to all those affected, I want to say, we are deeply sorry. We're sorry.
Those are just a few of the updates I could find. I haven't been able to stop thinking about this since it occurred. And just as I'm wrapping up the video, we're getting news of a uranium fire at Y-12 National Security Complex in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. So yeah,